On JBS, I'm Mark Golub with Thane Rosenbaum and Shahar Azani, and of course, Israel's ambassador of song, Eliran, and we're celebrating Israel's 70th anniversary. You were saying something so interesting during the break. You remember what you were saying? Can you say a little bit about it?
Yes, you were asking about what do people need to understand about Israel that they don't, whether it's American Jews or general public or the world in general. And I want to say that beyond the haze and smoke of international diplomacy, the quagmire of politics and war, we need to think about the essence of Israel as good, the good nature of Israelis, the pure desire for peace that resides in the hearts of each and every Israeli from the very beginning when Israel was reestablished and the hand was reached out to our neighbors. People forget that at the end of the day, the people of Israel, the nature of society, the community has so much goodness about this that goes far beyond all of the elaborate adjectives that are being used to describe us on international media.
Yes. Comment?
I thought that was beautifully stated because he's quite right, Shahar, that, you know, everyone wants to talk about the conflict.
Yes.
You know, and there's so much more here to this country.
Yes.
And there's also so much more to the people of this country. And so, you know, it's very hard to watch. I think viewers of JBS, you know, they watch a program like this. We're all here for the same good purpose, the spirit of loving this country. And it's a country that's demonized. Mm-hmm. And it's a country that is undeservingly held to a standard that no other country has. So, as Shahar is saying, you know, at its most core level, there's a goodness. It is no accident that when there are global disasters around the world, the Israelis are the first planes out to rescue. No one wants to cover that piece of the story because it doesn't fit the other narrative of the conflict. But the essential goodness of Israelis as a people and in spite of all of this negative reaction toward them and the existential threats under which they live, it is extraordinary that they've maintained such a sense of spirit and devotion and commitment and their essential humanity.
Yes.
I owe it to her. I just have to say this because I'm looking here at Golda Meir. And when you think about Golda, so unjustly remembered mostly for the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And you remember that it was Golda Meir with her vision and the vision of the Zionist leadership. Here I use the word to Consul General Dayan. The fact is that she established Israel's international arm, reaching out to the world to build connections in Mashav and work together to make the world a better place through education, healthcare, agriculture. And she did this in the mid-50s, not when it's fashionable, Nobel Peace Prize, kind of like it's going to be on Twitter. She was way ahead of the curve. And by the way, you talk about enthusiasm for Zionism. When you go out there and you tell people about a woman leader who paved the way for people to connect, years and years ago, before it was so fashionable, people are excited because they realize that this is truly a unique nature. It's just like when you think about David Ben-Gurion, and you take a poli-sci class for a minute, thinking about the beleaguered leader who commands an army of a few thousand unorganized people against the British who armed the organized 5 armies around the state of Israel, against the world-leading superpowers who whisper and shout at the nascent state and said, do not declare. And against that backdrop, he declares. And the state of Israel is reborn, and that still gives me the chills.
It still gives you chills. When you say it gives me chills too, by the way. That is so lovely. Yes, you know, as wonderful as the startup nation is, and it's wonderful that, you know, Israeli chips are in cell phones. It's wonderful that you can swallow a camera made in Israel that can really save your life. It's not about that for me. It's about the goodness of the people you talked about. It's about Israel on the Syrian border. It's about Israel in Haiti. It's about the fact that if you go to an Israeli hospital, I was hospitalized at Shahar Azani Hospital. The best nurses I had were Arab. And I'm sitting with a Palestinian family from the West Bank. I got well, and I couldn't leave the hospital. And every day, the same family was there because their Palestinian Arab mother was in the heart division of Shahar Azani. And when I had to go home I was at the Inbal, it was the Palestinian family that got me a taxi driver to drive my wife and me back to the. And there is a Arab Israeli sitting as a Supreme Court justice, not only a Supreme Court justice, the head of the Supreme Court, who was the one who sentenced an Israeli president to prison for sexual misconduct. And no Israeli made an issue out of it. None of this is an issue in Israel. To me, that's the strength of Israel. I say it over and over again. As wonderful as an idea as it is, it's the people of Israel that we should be celebrating. And I want to bring one more person to both of your attention. Because of you, I got to meet Yahya Mahmoud. He is it's interesting, he calls himself an Israeli Arab. It's not clear as an Israeli Palestinian. He was brought up in Afula. And he described on L'chaim to me how when he grew up, he had no understanding of what the Jewish people were, what the Jewish state of Israel was. And because of circumstance, he was exposed to it. He is now an ardent, fervent Zionist, and he's in the IDF today, Shahar. And you're the one who brought him to JBS. I want the two of you to listen to a brief piece of that L'chaim interview with Yahya Mahmoud. Let's see it.
The way that I see Israel is, I look at Israel and I see a future, not only for the Jewish people, but for the entirety of the region, for the entirety of the Middle East. An example to go by. I see a country where minorities are thriving, numbers are going up instead of going down. I see a country that started with 163,000 Arabs, Israeli Arab citizens, and now we're close to 2 million. I see a country where small religious sects are being respected in the Middle East. I always tell my friends and people who never have come to visit Israel, I say, you'll be lying on the beach in Tel Aviv, look at all the women and the men around you and everybody's having fun, and for a split second, it will hit you that you are in the Middle East and you will not believe it.
He's a wonderful kid. Any comment about him?
I'll just add this anecdote. You're talking about him being in the IDF, and that's correct. He received offers from the army to join the media department in Arabic, to do this, to do that, and he said, no, it is my obligation to fight side by side with my brothers and sisters, Jews and non-Jews of Israel, and to stand up for my country. He could have taken the easy path, and now this guy is a fighter.
Fabulous. Your thoughts?
The tragedy is that you can only see him on JBS. The CNN audience will never know of him. MSNBC, the New York Times will not know of him. What we want to hear, that narrative is a narrative of angry Arabs whose land was stolen. And not a pluralistic, diverse Israel society. Not a society that an Arab citizen could rise to the level of being both Miss Israel and a Supreme Court justice. That story doesn't work for those major networks, and they don't work on university campuses. As you know, I've spent far too much of my life on university campuses, and this is unheard of. This is unthinkable. Somebody like him would be shouted down as if he was a traitor, as if he was a stooge, as if he was a liar. And instead, it's only on JBS that you can actually see this. And I hope the JBS audience internalizes what you just saw with that young man. There's a much longer, lengthier interview that Mark had on his show. But this is the kind of story that needs to be told. We need to make sure that in order to respond to this, what's on campus known as the intersectional argument, which is that, you know, the Israelis are nothing but a bunch of white colonialists taking away other people's land, we need to hear from him. Because that narrative and what Shahar just said, his commitment to this country, or what I said to you before, an African American from Chicago who said, defending Israel is really important to me. That part of the Israeli story is simply not told, not communicated elsewhere.
To add to what you said, Thane, here is what we can do. JBS has been an incredible tool of empowerment for our community, for our people, for our state, for our dream. Take that interview, use it on YouTube, share it on your social media outlets. The reach that Yahya has been able to get through those interactions, through that interview, Mark, and other activities he has done has been unbelievable. And like you said, Thane, if we don't do it, no one else will.
That's right.
Im en anachnu lanu, mi lanu.
Okay, we go back to our JBS phones, and I'm delighted to be joined by one of world Jewry's foremost authors, Francine Klagsbrun, whose most recent work is a biography entitled Lioness, Golda Meir and the Nation of Israel, and that book won the Jewish Book Council's Book of the Year for 2017. Fran, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag
It's a pleasure
Sameach.
to be with you.
Okay, Fran, I'm asking everybody, what's Israel turning 70 mean to you?
Oh, it means the world to me. It means that all of our dreams of a sovereign state have come true, and that this state is going to last. You know, in the early years, people said, Golda Meir used to say she hated it when people spoke about whether Israel would survive. She'd say, does anyone say, will France survive? Will Germany survive? We are a living country, we're a sovereign country, and we don't have to talk about survival. And I think 70 says that. This is a country that is here to stay. We don't have to say, will it survive? This is a country that's one of the lights into the world, and I think it's a great day to celebrate.
That is lovely. Fran, we are joined by Shahar Azani and Thane Rosenbaum. Shahar, do you have a question for Fran?
Yes, Francine, good to hear your voice again. Since we are here in your presence by voice and Golda Meir's presence by photo, I want to ask you, the perception of Golda Meir as 1973, the Yom Kippur War, versus her reality with the expansion of Israel's ties into Africa and the developing world. How do these two images balance?
Well, unfortunately, in Israel, the view of the 1973 war still seems to dominate, and there are still many negatives said about her, largely because of that, and some of it, I believe, is sexist and misogynistic, because she was a woman, and some of the people who began criticizing her had worked for her as young men, and they didn't like working for this powerful woman. So it's unfortunately, in Israel, I think it's changing. I think it's beginning to change, not only with my book, but with the Archives has put out a book of documents, and the archivist is also promoting her good name. So I think that's beginning to change. Here in America, as you know, the view of Golda is very different. She's really admired, looked up to as a hero. She's one of us, as it were. And really respected for what she did accomplish with the African nations, with many other things. But, you know, nobody knows history anymore. And the kids and the young people in Israel don't know history any more than the young Americans do. And I think that's something that needs to be taught now. Who were the founders and who were they? And they may have had faults. Everybody has faults, but she accomplished great things for the country. And people need to know that.
You know, and her vision, not only vis-a-vis the American Jewish public, but the general public, in her leadership and outreach, was very visible for me when I arrived in Nairobi and served at the Israeli embassy. And one of the very first things that I heard was the expression of gratitude for the kind of work that she was responsible for back in the day. And this is what I decided that I'm going to bring with me to wherever I go, wherever I speak in the US and beyond, to share it with audiences. Like, as Thane said, aside from JBS, this is not going to be a headliner on CNN.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's really wonderful that you're doing that, because nobody knows about the incredible outreach that Golda instituted toward the African countries, and they were developing. I mean, it was not, you know, it was politically important for Israel, but it was not just that. It was this sense of camaraderie, a sense that, you know, we came from where you are. We were a little nation. We were growing. You know, we've learned how to do things. We want to share it with you. We want you to grow and develop. And that was a beautiful thing. And the African nations absolutely appreciated it until, of course, they decided after 1967 to go with their Arab, quotes, brothers and sisters. But it is something that needs to be spread around. It's wonderful that you're doing that.
Okay, Francine, I want you to take 30 seconds or so. What do you wish for Israel on its 70th anniversary?
Well, I guess there's nothing original for me to say that I wish for it to have peace with its neighbors. I think that's the greatest wish I think anybody can have, because, and I think it's close to it. The Arab nations are now, beginning to accept Israel and want to have peace. and everybody in the region can grow if there is peace. And so I just want that existential fear to leave the Israeli minds, and for them to keep growing the way they have been, and developing their, not only technology, but their literature. They're at the top of everything in the world, and just the wars and the anxiety about wars and about living well. I just want it to disappear, and I think it will.
I do.
I am hopeful that
I certainly
eventually
hope so
things will
too.
change.
You say it so beautifully. Francine, you and I go way back. It is always very kind of you to make sure you make time for me, for JBS audience. I thank you very much, and I wish you also, you too, Chag Sameach, Yom Huledet Sameach on Israel's 70th anniversary. You have done much to help the Jewish state. Thank you, darling.
Thank you very much. Thank
Be
you
well.
for having me on.
Francine Klagsbrunn. Well, one of the things we wanted to do on this celebration of Israel's 70th birthday is to have the chance to speak to someone who was actually there in Palestine as it became the State of Israel on May 14th, 1948. So I'm just thrilled to now be joined in studio by a couple who lived the establishment of the State of Israel, Tikva and Oscar Glass. It is so wonderful to have you here. Tikva, you have been so kind to me. Both of you have been so lovely. You watch JBS all the time.
Yeah,
You like it?
very much. I watch it again and again.
That is wonderful. Okay, Tikva, what's your? Are you both Holocaust survivors?
No, he's a Holocaust.
You are, Oscar. You are.
He was not.
I don't
camp.
consider myself a survivor because I did not end up in a concentration camp.
You were in occupied German land during World War II.
Yes.
That makes you a survivor.
Absolutely.
And I understand that there are those who draw things about the camp. I don't, and many people don't. Do you, by the way?
No, I don't.
Yes.
I mean, I think that I appreciate what Oscar's saying.
Yes.
There's a sense of modesty
Yes.
about his
Humility.
experience.
Yes.
Humility is quite the right word, and I appreciate hearing that. But no, I quite agree. He's a Holocaust survivor.
Where were you born, Oscar?
Belgium.
Belgium. Where were you born?
Iraq.
Iraq. When did you come to Israel?
I was a child, mid 1944.
Just before Israel becomes a state.
Yes.
A few years.
Yes.
And so, Tikva, do you remember anything about this? Again, I don't need the exact age. You're roughly how old in 1948?
I was like around 5 years old.
Okay. So it's hard for you to remember, is it not?
No, I remember.
Tell me what you remember as a 5-year-old in 1948.
I remember that my father decided that we are going to go to Palestine. And we didn't know what Palestine was, but then it's true, we were 5 of us, 5 kids. And at the time, the World War II still was going on, and my father was a young man, and he was able financially, and they were hearing the stories about what's happening in Europe. And he said if he decided, that he told us later, that if we're going to die, let's go fight. So he managed to have a British passport. He put all of us in one passport. We're all in one picture. My mother and I were, all of us. He used to travel before, so he had his own passport. And we sat in the airport in Basra for a few days, and the British were there, and they built beautiful places to stay, and we loved it, it was beautiful. And we were so finally they put us on a military plane.
Yes.
We were sitting on benches with soldiers, and from Basra, which is lush and beautiful. And we landed. It was a seaplane, and we landed in the Dead Sea. And my mother said, "Oh, we came from paradise to hell." so we got off the plane, and I remember we were sitting in trucks with the soldiers, no roads from the Dead Sea, to Jerusalem.
That's an amazing story. Okay, but I want to know a memory about May 14th, 1948.
So that was amazing. We were children. Then I was like third grader. Yeah. And so it was, oh my God, that was an amazing day. People were celebrating. The stores were open and giving free everything. One of my father acquaintance, he had dishes stores, and he took all his glasses and he left it outside, and he put wine, and everybody had to drink l'chaim and break up the glass. So that kind of thing was a huge celebration.
That's
3 days people were dancing in the street.
That is lovely. Oscar, when do you come to Israel? When do you come?
No, I didn't go to Israel.
You went to Palestine.
No.
Where did you go?
We went through the war in Belgium. The German Wehrmacht was basically in the same building that we lived. They took over half the building. And with the Jewish Star, we had our problems. And we finally decided to leave Belgium. And we went through the whole trip all the way through France for about maybe more than a half a year to 9 months. And if we look at pictures from the past, you had all the refugees going on the highways, and then the Germans came with the planes and started shooting at them.
You were there?
Yeah, I was there. I was there
Walking
among
on
them.
the highways, and they came
Was
to
it
shoot
scary,
them.
frightening?
Yeah. And in Europe, you had, especially in France, you had gutters off the highway. And guess what? Little children decided to jump in the gutter to miss the bullets. And we were lucky in a sense that we ended up going all through France, and we came to the Swiss border. And the Swiss soldiers were there. They interviewed us, and they allowed us to go into Switzerland.
And from there?
From there, we stayed there basically during the war, and after the war, we went back to Belgium. And then in 1946, 47, the Russians were rattling their sabers with all kind of noises. So we decided, and we came to the United States.
I see. Where did the two of you meet?
We met here in New York.
Okay, okay. You grow up in Israel?
Yes.
Okay. And when do you come to the United States?
I was about 22 years old.
Okay, so you spend the first part of your life in Israel.
Yeah.
In the very early years, 48, 49, 50, 51, 50, you're experiencing Israel in its infancy,
Yes.
Tikva. For people who weren't there, have no idea what it was like, tell me what was Israel like in the first, 5 to 10 years.
I can tell you before even one story that it was amazing. My father came, decided to move to Tel Aviv, and he bought a house in Geula Street, the first house on the beach, brand new house, had 6 bedrooms. One day, they were kind of Shomer Shabbat, and my mother it was Friday. My mother did everything for the Shabbat, and she got dressed. She was a young woman, and she went with her friend for coffee. And we were playing in outside, and the doors were open. And within in minutes we had a housekeeper. Within minutes, some guys came in, like 6, 7 of them, and they took our furniture out of the first floor of the house, and they were putting cots in there, and they have 3 couples, one couple with 2 children. I didn't know that what was happening. I didn't know what it was. So we were looking for our father, screaming, "What's going on here? What's going on?" It was before Israel became state.
I understand.
So finally we get my parents. My father comes, and I remember I'm holding my father's hand, going to the police station to report these people invaded our home. So some guys came, they held my father on his shoulders, and they say to him, "If you go to the police, these people will be taken back on the boat to Cyprus." They just arrived that night, like the story from the Exodus. They landed on the beach, and they came like with bathing suits and with like no clothes. So my father turned, came back, and that night we shared with them our meal. Our neighbors all came in. They gave them clothes and food and everything else.
What a fabulous memory.
And the three, and they with their numbers, skinny, just they were on the boats for 2 months.
Okay. It was part of the illegal immigration,
Yes, it was
and they had to be
the Mapilim.
Yes. By the way,
Mapilim.
after the Declaration of Independence, Israel had to fight.
Yes. So Yaffo, they before even Israel became state.
Yes.
In Yaffo, there were all the Arabs, all the Muslims. They were the next day they were shooting. They were shooting at us, and we couldn't go on the beach anymore. We had to cross a street, Hayarkon Street, and we couldn't cross because they were sitting in Khazanbeg, that mosque that I hate. I'm sorry. That's sitting next to the Continental Hotel now in Tel Aviv. It was dilapidated little mosque, but they were sitting in there and they were shooting at us. They were shooting at children, and one child got hit, which I knew that child. He had bullet in his face. And then the war, Yaffo was invaded before the declaration, I think, of Israel, because if they wouldn't, then it would still be an Arab place. It would not be part of Israel today.
One more question. During the war itself, do you remember being frightened?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. We were not afraid. No, they were shooting at our home, and my father did not run away from home because it was not far away. He went and he called some people to put some steel plates on the wall so the bullet should not penetrate.
Interesting, yes.
We didn't run away.
Okay. So,
we were not afraid.
Tikva, what's it mean to you, Israel celebrating 70 years?
Amazing. I cannot believe it. It's just amazing. It's a miracle every day. I think it's a miracle. Mm-hmm. I cannot believe it's happening.
Shahar, you hear Tikva speak. Any thoughts come to mind?
Just how fortunate we are as a generation, and I am, to be alive at such a time, and how honored to be able to do what we do every day, to stand up for our people, for our country, for the ideal. We were given the golden key, and that feeling of elation fills me.
Yes. And your thought?
I just think it's incredible that Tikva just told us, one of the things we haven't pointed out is that first war, 10% of the Israeli population was killed. I mean, people forget this statistic, right? That would be 30 million Americans. I think 5,000 Americans were killed in Iraq. So think of 30 million people. So, in fact, I don't even know of any war where you can actually say that 10% of their population. So she's this little girl, and her father's fearless. I mean, these people were built to build this country.
Yes.
They were the right people to be there because after 10% of their population, they're saying, bring it. We're going to be here. We're not going anywhere.
The Egyptian came the next day, and they came with their plane, and they were just flying around and throwing bombs wherever they wanted to. And one fell across the street from our home. And they used to have the sirens, and they all ran to the shelter. There was no shelter. It was just nothing place to go to. I, as a child, I didn't want to go. was sleeping. It was in the morning. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go to the shelter. All of a sudden, the whole big piece of the ceiling fell off on a glass table was there, and it hit me. So I came to my, after that, but I came to my mother and said, why did you stay there? She screamed at me. But that's how it was. That's how it was.
You're thinking?
We're not going anywhere.
We're not going
They
anywhere.
would
going anywhere.
just flying
Just,
with
just
the,
if they understood that, the world would be able to make that take.
They were throwing bombs in the middle of on the population, like in our street, in Gala Street. I mean, where it could be. Dizengoff was not existed yet.
Yes.
Tel Aviv was till a little bit Yehuda or whatever it was. So that's how unbelievable.
What an amazing thought when you cross Ayarkon and you're afraid of a bullet, and today it's about parking.
Tikva and Oscar, it is so lovely that you made the trip out here
Thank
to
you.
spend a few minutes with us.
Amazing.
This is a very important celebration for American
amazing.
Jewry, and you
It's
helped
amazing.
made us
Oh,
feel like
my
we were
parents
closer to it. I thank you very, very much, darling.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you for
inviting
having
us.
us.
Thank you. And Shahar, my dear friend, I know I have to let you go. You have another event you have to go to. You know I love you so much, and it was so wonderful that you made sure you were here for the first half of our program. Love you
Amazing,
very
and an
much.
honor to be part of the JBS team.
It is wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
Of course, an organization that was instrumental in pre-state Palestine, in the creation of the State of Israel, and which continues to make a major contribution to the continued growth of the Jewish state, is the JNF, three of the most important and well-known letters in the Zionist lexicon, the Jewish National Fund. And how we all remember the blue and white pushkas and the sheets where you would stuff coins to help plant trees in Israel, which literally turned the desert into bloom. Of the dynamic Chief Executive Officer of the Jewish National Fund today is Russell Robinson, who talks about a very special memory he has about his time in the State of Israel. The words of Russell Robinson. I want a personal memory. Russell, you've been to Israel many, many times. Is there some moment that sticks out for you that somehow you carry with you all the time?
So I'll give you a personal moment. When I first came to Israel, and I didn't know, what to expect. And my grandfather had never, ever been to Israel, but he always talked to me about it. And he said to me, if you have a chance to ever get to Israel, Russell, go touch the Western Wall. But don't just touch it. I want you to turn around, and I want you to see Jews of all different nationalities, sizes, and dimensions coming towards that wall, and decide that that is the connection and the link in the chain that you will never break. Now, he had never seen it. He had never been to Israel. He came from Europe to El Paso, Texas. And I went to Israel, Mark, and I stood and I touched the wall. And I very, very slowly turned around, not knowing what to expect. And at that moment, in front of me was Jews, from Yemenite Jews to Ashkenazi Jews, to religious Jews to secular Jews. And my grandfather, who had never seen this in his life, painted that picture for me. And that's a link in the chain that I follow, my children will follow, and my children yet unborn.
Last question for you. I want to know what your wish is for the State of Israel as it begins its next 70 years. And what do you wish American Jews knew better about the State of Israel on Yom HaAtzmaut number 70?
So I think that's about knowing the Israel that is the real Israel. And that we, in our families, there's always blemishes. There's always issues. But we have a beautiful family called the Jewish people, called the land of Israel. And get to know it, and feel it, and experience it, and come and meet the people. And let's get away from all the pieces that divide us. we are one house of the Jewish people with different parts, bedrooms and living rooms and dining rooms and kitchens. And I want Israel, for all of us, to look as the unifier. It was in the biblical, it is today, and it is tomorrow. And young people, and I'm here, as I said, with 250 people from throughout the United States, and we got a big contingency of 25 to 40-year-olds that are here in Israel for Yom HaAtzmaut for the 70th anniversary. They will be here for the 75th and the 80th and the 100th anniversary of the State of Israel. And that chain and that link is what I wish for everybody to keep strengthening and strengthening.
I love you very much, Russell Robinson. Beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you for taking a moment to share your own feelings and thoughts on this, the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. Kol Tuva Hatzlacha, you continue the fabulous work you're doing, and let me always chase you and put you on JBS.
Well, thank you, Mark. And I just quickly will tell you that on the plane ride to Israel, I was stopped getting on the plane from this couple who said, Russell Robinson? And I said, yes. They said, we saw you on JBS.
Oh, that's a lovely story to end with. Thank you, Russell. Have a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Be well. Russell Robinson, CEO of the JNF, the Jewish National Fund. On JBS, we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. And lucky, lucky me now, we had to say goodbye to Shahar Azani. But we're joined now by Brooke Goldstein. She's the founder and executive director of the Lawfare Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising awareness about and facilitating a response to the abuse of Western legal systems and human rights law. And she is a spectacular human being. It is so lovely that you came out here and joined us. Thank you very much.
What a nice introduction for that. I'll come every day. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we continue with others, I want to know what this means to you. What is the 70th anniversary?
You were gonna ask
if
me
you had
that.
to guess, roughly how many times you've been to Israel?
Oh, God. Ooh.
More than you can count.
No, I'd say around 15.
Okay, fine.
No, I'm only 25, so that's good.
So, are you only 25? That's impossible. You've been doing this for a long time already. Okay, so tell me.
Not 25.
Yeah.
I have two
good.
kids.
Good. But I'll go along with it if you'll go.
Okay, so
okay.
Israel at 70. I have to say I was really nervous coming here because obviously you were going to ask that question. I was listening to the program in the car and in the green room. And how could one possibly summarize their feelings towards Israel, how much they love Israel? And to me, the only word that came to my head is gratitude. Because I grew up on the stories, obviously, of my grandparents being Holocaust survivors and, you know, learning and reading about the blood, sweat, and tears that it took to create this country from amazing people like the guests that you just have. And my generation gets to reap all the benefits of this. And I look around at people who are younger than me, who think they know Israel, who talk about Israel like they're experts. They've never been to Israel. We're just so ungrateful. And we should be waking up every morning and blessing, you know, saying thank you to Hashem for the fact that Jews exercise self-sovereignty for the first time in hundreds of years, and obviously all the privileges and the safety that comes with that.
Your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of Brooke Goldstein.
Me too.
And I have been for a long time. Although I was thinking about it, I think I met Brooke on your set.
It's true.
Many years ago.
We've been friends for many years, but it started there. And I can tell you, in listening to her speak, it occurs to me yet again about what you know, she's a true crusading lawyer on behalf of the Jewish people. And I don't think people really understand what she's done with built this organization, the Lawfare
By the way,
Project.
it's very courageous what she does.
Yeah, no, it's really, I mean, she...
I have people like Thane as mentors.
And by the way, the two of you together do a spectacular job. I am honored that the two of you are involved in JBS. It means the world to me. But I interrupted
Well,
you.
no, I was just going to say that, you know, that is what's really special about Jewish history is that, you know, little Brooke Goldstein took from her grandparents something, the sense of the building of Israel, the sense of the commitment of the survival of the Jewish people. This was internalized in her, and she's devoted her life in such a remarkable way on behalf of the Jewish people, in such an original way, and truly, I like to use the word crusading, lawyer on behalf of world Jewry, and certainly in the United States, in combating anti-Semitism on campuses, and this is also around the world. And I think that there is something about, that the post-Holocaust era that led to the creation of Israel and America's own sense, American Jewry's own sense of commitment to this new country. I mean, we were talking about this before with Francine Klagsburn. Golda Meir is the first famous Aliyah. Like someone who we think about. She did it that way, right? Brooke Goldstein does it her way. But there have been these people, and she's right about when Brooke talks about younger than us, people in her generation, who simply don't, they just don't feel it, they don't see it. There's something that Brooke has harnessed that I wish it could be bottled and given away, because it is a treasure in a way that we would want all Jews to feel.
But that's not Israel's fault. I mean, there was an op-ed that everybody was circulating, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that sort of blamed Israeli policy for the lack of closeness that Jewish Americans feel with a country. And I think that's entirely misplaced, because Israel does not have a responsibility to make everybody like her. And frankly, if everybody else was in Israel's situation, good luck with that, okay? So there's been a targeted campaign, obviously, to distance American Jews or even Western Jews and make them feel ashamed to say they're Zionists. I remember, only a couple years ago, I was at a party, and I said to another Jew, yeah, I'm a Zionist, are you? And he got up and he walked away from me because it was so shameful for him. That is a sickness that we American Jews have. And it has nothing to do with the state of Israel, this, self-hate, frankly.
Okay. Very often I say, lucky, lucky me. Look how lucky I am. And I'm surrounded by some of the most brilliant and deeply devoted Jews in the world. And I have the opportunity to present some of the outstanding leaders on the American Jewish scene, on the world Jewish scene. There is one who I have particular affection for, who I think does a spectacular job, not only because he is brilliant and brilliantly competent, but also because he has a neshama that is very unique in this crazy Jewish world of ours. He's the president and CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America, JFNA. He's Jerry Silverman, and he joins us now here in studio. Thank you, my friend, for being here.
It's great to be here.
Oh, it is wonderful to have you. And you're seeing, you were watching a little bit, you've seen a little bit. I'm beginning with the same way I've asked other people. Jerry, you're now intimate with the state of Israel, and given the very important position you now hold in leading us from within the Jewish Federations. You've been to Israel, you've talked to them all, you've seen it all. I want you to tell us now, what's it mean to you personally, Jerry Silverman, that Israel is turning 70?
So I would answer that two ways. First of all, from a spiritual sense, it truly is the brit. It's the covenant with the Jewish people and God, that we're back in the land. And it's truly a nes gadol, a great miracle, that in our lifetime, that we have the state of Israel. I mean, Brooke said it beautifully from a point of, we don't realize and take for granted that we have a state of Israel. Thousands of years, people, prayed for this, and we have it. And so to me, to celebrate 70 is just amazing.
Yes.
And secondarily, I would say that this year especially, I buried my father right before Rosh Hashanah this year.
What was his name?
Rav David Lipa, Rabbi David Silverman. And
how old was he?
He was 84 years old. And what's really amazing is he's buried on Har HaMenuchot in the cemetery as you enter Jerusalem. And we buried him next to my mother.
That's lovely.
Which was always their dream, from a sense of, when I go, we want to be buried in Jerusalem. And my mother's parents are buried 2 rows above them. And when you think about that from a sense of a love of the land and the concept of the 70th, you know, from my own sense, from a spirituality sense, from a sense of family, and how we were brought up, and how I hope the entire Jewish community evolves to understand that this miracle isn't something we can take for granted, that this miracle is something that's been handed to us, that we have a responsibility to polish and to nurture and to grow, and to create the continuity so generations after us get to celebrate this miracle.
That's lovely. You know, I reflect often on the very first major interview you and I did together in your office for L'Chaim when you first became CEO of JFNA, and many people referred to it a lot. And you had come from the profit world, and now all of a sudden JFNA tapped you to assume a responsibility that was desperately needed in the Jewish world, and you have done. I believe you exceeded everybody's wildest dream, and we had wild dreams for you, and you exceeded them all. And one of the things that touched me so much in our conversation, and I've had the privilege of being with your family and your daughters, and your wife Erica is here, and I'm very pleased. Thank you, Erica, for being here. Was how profound your own Jewish connection is. And this is not a slight on anybody else. It's just a reality. Sometimes people who are in institutional life are institutional Jews. They are not necessarily committed, observant Jews. And there is a profound neshama in you. And when I hear you talk about your father and the sweetness you did for him and for your mother, and that there's generations now in the same spot in Jerusalem, all that touches me. And so I want to ask you a question I wouldn't ask everybody. We've referred to the fact that this is the 70th anniversary. And somebody said, you know, it was in the year 70 CE that the Second Temple was destroyed. I said to myself, how could I have let that pass? You said the same thing. And then somebody here talked about the Talmudic reference to 70 ways in which the Torah was given, which is a midrash. But another very powerful 70 is from the Bible. It's the Jubilee year. It's the year of release in the Torah, where everybody is set free. Even if you're an indentured slave who decided you wanted to stay with your master, on the Jubilee year, you go free. And for me, that's been part of this in some subtle way. That there is and I want you to talk about this because I don't know that I'll say it well enough. There's sort of like a freedom that has been granted to Israel. This Yom HaAtzmaut that is different. We made it to 70. It's not the same as 69. It's not the same as 60. It's not the same as 36. It's not the same as 25. For me, there's something very enthralling about the concept of the Jubilee year, and this is Israel's Jubilee anniversary. So I've just said that, and I want to know what Jerry Silverman, how you react to it. Any thoughts at all?
Well, I have many thoughts. You know, the concept of Jubilee and a concept of freedom, and for me, it's about.
By the way, forgive me, because I made a mistake. Jubilee is the 50th year.
That's correct.
That is correct. So that in some way, my imagination gets ahead of me.
That's correct.
But I still want to ask the question in the same way.
So Jubilee plus 20.
Right.
Okay. So
it's a special year.
To me, I look at it and have been thinking about it, spending obviously an inordinate amount of time in Israel over the past number of years, but especially thinking about it over the last 12 months because this is momentous.
Yes.
And so one of the things that came to me is, you know, this is really a breakout year for the state of Israel. and I mean it across the board, that when you think of Israel's standing in the world, and you think of them, the state of Israel fulfilling the promise of Isaiah to be a true light unto nations, across the board, whether it's the first responder in Puerto Rico or a first responder in Houston, Texas, or giving $1 million to the Jewish community of Houston, Texas, or to see the innovations coming out of Israel in all kinds of sectors, especially just seeing one entrepreneur and innovator this week who runs a program called Innovation Africa, who is bringing solar power tied to pumping to villages in Africa because the mortality rate is so low because of the water they drink, that she's already implemented 100 clean water apparatus into these villages that is saving lives, and doing it as an innovator, but doing it saying, this is a gift from the state of Israel. And the government's not involved. This is people to people. And so when I think of the 70th year, and I think of this year being a breakout because it's becoming really clear to many in the world, and I mean people in the world, and to governments in the world, some that haven't been so friendly. There's a realization that what Israel has done in 70 years hasn't been matched by any country in the history of this world. And I believe we're at a breakout status.
All right, one more question for you. That was lovely. I want a favorite memory, some memory that stayed. You've been to Israel many times, you, your wife, your kids. Give me a memory that stays with you, that in some way you feel characterizes your relationship to the state of Israel.
Wow, one? Well, one is difficult. I'm going to say two memories, if I may.
That's fine.
So my parents dreamed of taking our family to Israel as a family, because they just loved the state of Israel. And so they took us in 1969, when literally there were 2 hotels on the beach in Tel Aviv. There was a Hilton and a Sheraton. But we went to Jerusalem. And I'm going to make a long story short. As I was a kid who was a mazik, I was a troublemaker, I was thrown out of breakfast. And we were at the King David, and they meet us in the van in 20 minutes out front. Just leave. You don't get breakfast. I roam the hotel. I go up to the 6th floor. I walk past a room where the door was open. There was a big guy standing outside the door, as I remember. But inside was a cart with milk and croissants and looked like some muffins, and I'm starving. I'm 11 years old. I walk past the guy, then go back to the door, and I look at the guy, and I said, yeah, this is the room, and I walk right in. And, you know, I walk in, I go right to the cart. I see some guy who looks at me with a surprise. It's a suite, and they're standing by the wall. And another guy looks at him and said, oh, it's okay. And so I literally pick up the pitcher of milk, and I pour a glass. And I'm about to drink the glass. One guy starts to leave the room. The other guy turns to face me, and it's Moshe Dayan. He has a patch over his eye, and he looks at me, and he says, what are you doing? And I said, don't worry, General Dayan, I'm starving. Please, I won't talk politics. And that went into a 3-minute conversation and whatnot. Then I heard my siblings yelling, where are you? You're supposed to be out front. And I ran out front. And of course, my parents start to yell at me at the van. And I said, I was talking to General Dayan. So of course, it was hard for them.
That's a fabulous memory.
It was hard for them to believe. But General Dayan comes out of the hotel. He hears them yelling at me. And all of a sudden, he says, Jerry, don't get in any more trouble. I fell in love with Israel right then.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The second one is in 2014. during the Gaza war. Two pieces of that puzzle was spending an inordinate amount of time with the families of the 3 boys who were murdered. And their cry for unity in the face of such horrible, horrific attack on their children. And their response was, we are going to be unified as a Jewish people, has to this day still resonated. And then spending 40 out of the 50 days in the South and spending it with the people of Israel, sharing that we're one family, and seeing it that we're truly one family together. Those are two.
You are spectacular. What's your wish now for the state of Israel? I want you to tell me what your wish for Israel is, and as you tell me that, I want you also to tell me what you wish American Jews understood better about the state of Israel.
So my wish for the state of Israel is to continue to grow and to nurture and to evolve as a democratic country. They are a beautiful country that should grow and breathe and continue the amazing inventiveness that they have as a people and the diversity they have as a people. Truly, being an oasis in the desert of a region and being a model to the world. And I truly believe they will be, and I truly believe we will be part of it. And as far as diaspora Jews or American Jews, I truly believe that we have a responsibility, and I hope that we truly educate ourselves to the whole story of Israel, and to understand all of it, and to think about how we build bridges. That our responsibility is to build bridges with Jewish family in Israel and everywhere. We don't have, as family, we don't have to always agree, but we have to love and we have to build bridges.
You know what I feel about you. You're spectacular. You continue the fabulous work you are on. Thank you for coming with your husband, Erica, and I love your daughters as well. You always are welcome here.
Thank you.
You continue.
Thank you.
You've called Tu v'Hatzlacha. You continue, and I really say to you, in the last number of years, I don't remember how many years ago was it you became?
It'll be 9 coming up.
We did that
Coming up.
interview 9 years ago.
Almost 9.
And we didn't age a day, did we? Neither one of us. Anyway.
I did. I don't think you did.
No. Anyway, I want you to know, you now are making Israel more, and you're bringing American Jewry closer. And so in many ways, this is your birthday too. Yom Huledet Sameach.
To all of us.
Mazal Tov.
To all
Thank
of
you,
us.
Jerry Silverman.
Thank you.
That concludes hour 2 of our 4 hours together celebrating the 70th anniversary of the State of Israel. I will continue to be joined by Thane Rosenbaum and Brooke Goldstein, and some other wonderful guests are coming up. I hope you stay with us for part 3. What we're going to do now as we break away is see a message from the President of the State of Israel, Reuven Rivlin, here on JBS. Stay with us.
Dear brothers and sisters in Israel and around the world, for some of you, 70 will seem very old. For some of you, 70 will seem still very young. But for all of us, this is a great celebration. The State of Israel is 70 years old. Today, we don't say just Chag Sameach or Happy Independence Day. We say Mazel Tov, congratulations. Today we say Shehecheyanu v'kiyimanu v'hegiyanu lazman hazeh. We say thank you to those who dedicated their whole life to building the State of Israel. We say thank you to you, our friends around the world. Wherever you are, you stand up for Israel every day and support our country and our people. And of course, we also have a great debt of gratitude to those who lost their lives, fighting to defend the land of Israel and the people of Israel. They paid the ultimate price to their families. We send our love and prayers to them. During the last year, I've traveled all across Israel. I've met Israelis for all of our communities, Jews and Arabs, religious and secular. I've met teachers and doctors, farmers and startup heads. They all share one thing in common, a shared hope for Israel to grow and prosper. I've also traveled around the world. I met the Jewish communities of North America at the GA in Los Angeles. I visited Germany, Bulgaria, Spain, and more. I've welcomed in Israel world's leaders from the United States, from Africa, from Latin America, from Europe and Asia. And all these leaders and representatives from around the world also have something in common. They are amazed and have such great appreciation for all we have achieved in just 70 years. From water technology to cyber, from academic research to medical breakthrough, from agricultural to clean energy, Israel continues to inspire the world, and the people of Israel continue to inspire me. 70 years is a long time for a person, but a short time for a people. I wish that together with you, Israel will continue to grow and develop for the benefit of all people, all over the world, and all together. Chag Sameach, and God bless all of you. God bless the State of Israel.